So how do we know that this is asking us to multiply? You're looking at what's in between. So this operation says take F times G. So for multiplication, we're going to make a box, or you can do first, outer, inner, last, but you're multiplying these two together. So you're taking 2x plus 1 and multiplying it by x minus 3. So I'll give you a moment to fill in the 4 squares. Combine your like terms. All right, so when we fill in our squares, we get 2x squared, and then we have a 1x, negative 6x, and a negative 3. We combine our like terms, which would be these 2 squares, and our final answer would be 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Yes.
Should we just not do anything with the x in parentheses?
No, because what this means is this is telling us to take, that's a abbreviation for saying take f of x times g of x. So that just means take the f and g function and multiply them together. So now there's 2 different ways we can do part F. The first way would be to find f of negative 2 and multiply that by g of negative 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I take my f function, which is 2x plus 1, and I substitute negative 2 into that function, I would have 2 times negative 2 plus 1. Figure out what that number is. Multiply it by negative 2 minus 3. Figure out what that number is. So what's 2 times negative 2 plus 1?
Negative 4 plus 1.
Yep, negative 4 plus 1. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. So we're taking negative 3 times negative 5, which gives us a positive 15 for my answer. That's what f of negative 2 times g of negative 2 would be. Now there is another way you could go about doing that, and that would be to substitute that negative 2 into this function that you created by multiplying. So let's do it that way also. So 2 times negative 2 squared minus 5 times negative 2 minus 3. And verify that you get 15. So do you get 15 when you substitute in the -2? All right, so both ways we know our answer is 15. Your test is September 6th, your quiz, I should say. And when you see this question, you have two different ways to get your answer. All right, so now let's talk about G and H, which is division. So still using the same two functions, let's go ahead and find f over G, which means we're putting f of x in the numerator and g of x in our denominator. And this is actually the easiest to do because you're just making a fraction and you're putting your f function in the numerator and your g function in your denominator. And that's all you have to do for that. So I think you multiply, and this was subtraction. This is -2 minus 3, not -3, -2. So that should be a -5.
Oh, -2 minus 3.
Because the function is x minus 3, so it would be -2 minus 3.
Okay.
And so then to find part H, you would just simply substitute in a -1. So when you do that, that would be 2 times -1 plus 1 over -1 minus 3. So that would be -2 plus 1, which is -1 over -4. And then we know that 2 negatives becomes positive, so that would be a positive 1/4. All right, so before we finish out this one, just a reminder, for this is the first one, G, where you would not have a domain of all real numbers. Let's go ahead and write the domain of this function. Because x minus 3, your denominator, cannot equal 0. So what does that mean? X cannot equal what?
3.
3. X cannot equal 3. So 3 would have an open circle. So yep, it would be -infinity to 3 union 3 to infinity. All right, so I'll give you a minute to finish copying that down, and then we'll go to 2.2. Adriana, I forgot to tell you, there's 2 handouts in the front by the laptop that you'll need to glue down. All right, so let's go ahead and start 2.2. So 2.2 is over the graph of functions. Homework 6 is due tomorrow. That's over 2.1. Homework 7 is due Thursday, and that's over 2.2. And those are the questions for homework 7. Now, only if you need to, you can write down what a vertical line test is. Who remembers vertical line tests from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2? It's like the way to test if a graph is a function. So you can copy down this part here. Vertical line test. Remember, it passes if it only crosses at one point. And then go ahead and find example 1, which you should have, and glue it down. So is the graph a function? And after you glue it down, pass your glue stick to somebody because they may not have a glue stick. All right, so 5 of these are functions. See if you can figure out which 5 will pass the vertical line test. So 5 of these graphs are functions. So if I draw a vertical line, okay, I drew a vertical line through every single graph. If my red line crosses the graph only one time, it is a function. So the ones that are functions would be A. What about B? Is B a function? What about C?
Yes.
D? No. So this is a no because that vertical line crosses through it in two places. So that's why that's a no. What about E? E is a yes. What about F?
No.
No. Crosses through twice. What about G?
No.
No. That crosses through 3 times. What about H? Yes. All right, and then example 2 is finding the domain and range. Anybody need more time with example 1? All right, so example 2, go ahead and glue this down. You might want to write before you glue it down. Write down example 2, state the domain and range of each function, and then glue it down. And make sure you're gluing it down so that that middle graph has a closed point at the top. When we're talking about domain, we read the graph from left to right. And for range, we read it from the bottom up. Because it's the lowest. The lowest or smallest numbers for your domain are at the left. And the largest numbers for your domain will be on the right. For the range, the smallest numbers are at the bottom. The largest numbers are at the top. So we're going to look at this graph and state the domain and range for all 3 graphs, for each graph. Does anybody need more time to glue it down? All right, so domain. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this first graph. So for our domain, we're looking at how far does this graph go to the left. So this is how far it goes to the left. What is the x value of this point here? The x value? 0. So that means that the domain of this graph starts at 0. And then it has an arrow that points to the right. So that means it's going towards infinity. Now, because this is a closed circle, 0 gets a bracket. So my domain would be bracket 0 to infinity. The range is the lowest point. It's okay. And this is point here. This is 0, -1. So the y value of that point is -1. So -1 gets a bracket and is going up. So that would be towards infinity. So that would be your domain and range for that first graph. Yes.
What if we make something U-shape so they overlap? Would you just use both points for the domain range?
Like a U like this? Like a parabola?
Yeah, or if it goes sideways.
If it goes like this?
Yeah,
So your domain would be,
that first point there.
and then both arrows are going to infinity?
Oh, so it's just
Infinity.
that first point to
Infinity,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so now for your second graph, your domain so your lowest x value occurs right here. And what is the x value at this point? Let me zoom in. What does x equal right here? So -4, would that get a bracket or a parentheses? A bracket. And then your largest value would be here, which is what? 5. And that's an open circle, so that would get a parentheses. So your domain would be -4 to 5. So -4 to 5. And your range, that's your lowest number. So your lowest point is here, which is actually still, so you're looking at your lowest point. This is the lowest point. So your lowest point would be y is -4. So that's why I wrote for the range, you go from the bottom up. So -4 to 3. -4 gets a parentheses. And the 3 gets a bracket. So this point here has an open circle. So the lowest point, when you're looking at it from the bottom, the lowest point here is -4, and that does not have a closed circle. And it's going up to 3. 3 is closed, so that gets a bracket. And then lastly, your domain. So for this last graph, coming from the left, so do you see how there's an arrow pointing to the left? So this arrow is going left and up. So from the left, that means the domain is coming from the smallest number, because it's coming from the left, will be what? -infinity. And it stops here. What does x equal right here? 3. So -infinity to 3. Your range is your lowest number, which is -1. But again, notice how this arrow is pointing up. It's going left and up. So your lowest number is -1, and the highest number would be infinity. -1 gets a bracket. All right, so we're gonna do example 3 and we'll end there. We don't have anything else to glue down. So we're gonna write down the function. You might wanna go to a new page because we're going to take one function and answer 6 questions about one function. So for example 3, go ahead and copy this down. I'm gonna actually take off B and C because I only want you to focus on A first because A takes a little bit more space. So I'll give you a moment to copy that down and then we'll start working through. So remember, when you see f of x means what? Y. So you can also write this as y equals. Y is the same as f of x. So when we're trying to figure out if this point is on the graph of f of x, we're just going to do a substitution. And if it's a true statement, then that means yes. And if it's false, then we say no. And that's it. So how do we figure out if the point 314 is on the graph? So does 14 equal, I'm going to put a question mark. Does that equal 3 plus 2 over 3 minus 6? So I took this y value and I put it in place of y. And then I took my x value and I substituted it in place of x. And we're going to see if we actually get 14. So 14 is 5 over 2, and then 3 minus 6. Wait, I didn't mean to say 5 over 2. 3 plus 2 is 5. And that's over 3 minus 6, which is negative 3. So is that true? Does 14 equal negative 5/3? No. So that means that 314 is not on the graph. All right, so let's look at part B. So for part B says if x equals 4, what is y? So how do you think we're going to do that? Plug in a 4. Good. You're right. We're going to take this 4 and put it here and here to get y. So y equals 4 plus 2 over 4 minus 6. And you should get -3. Who got -3? So what that's telling us then is that the point 4, -3 is on the graph. That's what you figured out. Because we actually took an input and got an output of -3. So the point x is -3, x is 4, y is -3 is on the graph.
So our final answer would be in ordered pair.
No, so I was just saying that. So the answer, our final answer is, so because the question is asking, is if x equals 4, what is y? And the answer is y would be -3. I was just making an extension to that to say that the point 4, -3 is on the graph. All right, almost done for today. Go ahead and copy down question C. So question C says, and I think the hardest part is reading these questions. What is that saying?
If y equals 2, then what is x?
Exactly. If y equals 2, then what is x? Now that's going to be an equation that you have to solve. So I'm going to put my 2 right here. So I want you to solve this equation. 2 equals x plus 2 over x minus 6. Go ahead and make this a proportion. Cross multiply and solve that. So 2 times x minus 6 equals 1 times x plus 2. So 2x minus 12 equals x plus 2. I'm going to subtract the x and add the 12. And that gives you x equals 14. And that is your answer. All right, so 3 more parts to this function and we are done for today. Same function, and we have 3 more questions. Part D is asking you, what is the domain? Do we have a red light? Yes, yep. Go ahead and write your domain. So we know that x minus 6 cannot equal 0, which means x cannot equal 6. And that is how you would write your domain. Negative infinity to 6, union 6 to infinity. For your x-intercept, this is a D for part D, not for domain. For part E, it says find your x-intercept, which means that y equals 0. That's how you find your x-intercept. Set y equal to 0. So you're going to have an equation, 0 equals x plus 2 over x minus 6. And you can still make this a proportion. 0 has a denominator of 1, just like any other number. Go ahead and solve that for x. So that would be 0 times x minus 6 equals 1 times x plus 2. 0 times anything is 0. So you should get that negative 2 equals x. Now, whenever you're asked to find the intercept, you have to write that as an ordered pair. And some people lost a half a point or a point on the test because they did not write it as an ordered pair. So if you're asked to find an intercept, you always write that as an ordered pair. And then lastly, for part F, to find your y-intercept, you're going to set x equal to 0. So that would be y equals, and then you would have 0 plus 2 over 0 minus 6. Go ahead and find your number. Reduce your fraction. You always reduce fractions. So that would be y equals negative 2 over 6, which reduces to negative 1/3. So your ordered pair would be 0, negative 1/3.